we see how your brain aligns with the movie, and when you tell someone else the story of the movie, their brain aligns with your brain, but aligns also with the brain of the director of the movie. Whoa. You open a different version, which means that you can actually change the past. We don't really have to be kind of confined to the story that we experience. We can actually change it. This is what the brain is for, to simulate and change and adjust and synthesize better version of life. It goes with you, and it carries all of the history in the form of memories. All you have from what happened before you is stored in the form of memories, and they're not accurate, and they're kind of compressed. So that's all you have about the past. You have no idea in the future, even though your brain tries to predict it all the time. You don't know what's going on. All you have is this kind of sliver of reality, which is the present, which is all you have. And you control everything that happens there. The nice thing about the present is that actually it interacts with everything in your brain, and you can change things. What we learned in the last 5 years, if I had to summarize it in one sentence, they change every time you use them. So if you have a memory stored here of what you had for lunch yesterday, and I ask you, what did you have for lunch? You basically open the memory right now and you tell me a story, but whatever happens right now goes into the story and you save it differently. And if I ask you tomorrow what you had for lunch, you'll open the modified version. So every time I ask you the same question, you open a different version, which means that you can actually change the past. You can actually change your experience of things. This is why therapy works, right? You go, your girlfriend breaks up with you, you go to the therapist, she asks you what happened, you tell the story, she intervenes, you save it differently. They ask you a week after, what happened, you tell a different story. After 5 meetings, you have a different version of the reality. And that is powerful, because it means that we control the narrative that we have. We don't really have to be kind of confined to the story that we experience. We can actually change it. This is what the brain is for, to simulate and change and adjust and synthesize better version of life. We can make ourselves happy, we can make bad things look better, we can control things, and it's all by virtue of just telling a story, looking at it differently, and saving it again. It's as simple as that. We have the ability to actually change the story all the time.
All right, I want to ask you all the questions that I get asked to which I have no answer. How can I get more motivation? The promise I make to people watching this show is, from watching this show, you will accomplish more than you would have if you didn't watch the show.
Let me say this in neuroscience words. So motivation is a word, right? It's a label that we put a set of events in our brain. What you actually want is the outcome of that. You want to do things that when it's hard. So I think that there are a few kind of things that we know work. One is evidence of past successes. If I sit with you and I go back to your memories and I reframe them as successes, suddenly the current event that's the same is a success. So I think that one thing is like having success stories and identification stories. I get asked by my students often, how do I become funnier? How do I become smarter? And like my one tip that I give them all the time is surround yourself by people that you want to be like. You want to be funny? Just sit next to comedians. Just go to the same room they are and just sit next to them. We know now that brains interact with each other through language in a way that synchronizes the brains. So when I talk to you right now, if you're engaged with what I say, it means that if we scan our brain right now, our brains are going to look alike. Their brains literally start kind of, if you want, pulsing in the same way. Parts of the brain light up in the same way, parts shut down. So we actually are affected. This is how we affect each other. This is how communication made humans who they are. This is the one thing that makes us better than all the other animals, because we are able to communicate using language, affect each other's brain, and create narratives that don't exist together. We both believe in things that we've never seen before, like God, or ideas that like democracy, or money. Like those things we invented, and we can communicate them and create this image in people's brains, and they all share this thing. So in the same way, if you surround yourself by people that you want to be like, you hear them communicate, they change your brain, and it's going to rub onto you. You will actually become funnier. If you sit and listen to funny people next to you, you actually become more motivated if you're next to people that are motivated. The next version of that, if you cannot find them, if you're sitting right now in a rural part of Alaska and you can't just find yourself in Los Angeles with the people you want to be with, is to actually just look at them on videos, on books. And that's the way our brain basically gets content and change. So changing brains happens in many, many ways, but the easiest one that everyone can try is to say what kind of world I want to be in and bring this world to you in the form of movies, stories, TV shows, or people. That's the ways to kind of get things that you want next to you.
And do you think when you're doing that it's you're getting into a repetitive brain firing pattern that ultimately wires?
You actually change your brain. So we didn't mention the science behind it much, like in terms of what we do, but we put electrodes in people's brains and we look at their brains while things happen to them. When you watch a movie, we see how your brain aligns with the movie, and when you tell someone else the story of the movie, their brain aligns with your brain, but aligns also with the brain of the director of the movie.
Whoa.
So communication is this mechanism by which information flows between brains and changes the brains. And actually, if you want to take it one step above, this is also how we change ourselves, because we talk to ourselves all the time. You walk, you drive your car, or you walk to work, and you're just alone with yourself and you communicate. You also change your brain. You kind of solidify the things that you want to be more like, and you suppress the ones you don't want. So we always talk. And those voices, those are basically the other characters in our brain that talk to each other. You kind of choose which ones to give more weight to. So this is how you become the better person you want to be.
That is the most important thing anybody struggling to have success should know, is the narrative that you tell yourself is the most important thing you have. And if you tell yourself a story of struggle, inadequacy, not being good enough, failure, like all of that, then that's going to reinforce, because that literally becomes your identity. And the more they look at that failure, the harder they go in a new and better direction.